Oh, you lovely people, are you hanging in there? Exhausted already? I am too, I know. But I will do my duty for the sake of duty, from duty, to get us all through this in one piece. Anyhow, in that last video, we went through that shopkeeper example. Remember, the point of the shopkeeper example was just to illustrate that it's not enough for your action to simply conform with duty. If you have a good will, you're going to do more than just do your duty. Again, what more is needed? It's going to be something about the reasons for those actions that are going to explain it. So Kant says that considers a possibility. Well, maybe what we need for this maxim is that the person doing it has an immediate inclination to do that thing. Again, by immediate inclination, Kant just means that you're doing your duty because you actually want to do your duty. Because the shopkeeper, remember, didn't want to do their duty. They wanted to make money or keep their customers. It just so happened that at that moment, setting fair prices was doing it. But you could imagine that maybe, you're doing the right thing and you actually want to do that. You're like, no, I'm doing this because I want to do this, not because it's, going to do something else. No, I want this thing. I desire this one exact thing. That's an immediate inclination. You're doing it because that's exactly what you want. And so this leads to then Kant's example about self-preservation. That is, Kant thinks you have a duty to preserve your life. So suicide is wrong, according to Kant. He's quite clear on that. No, Kant says you must preserve your life. Again, self-preservation is absolutely a duty that you have. And I suspect that most of us are okay with that, probably because, we fear death or we really love our life. And so for whatever reason, the fear of death or love of life, of course, we want to preserve our life then immediately. We care about our life. And hey, that means we truly want to do our duty because our duty is to preserve our life. Yeah, so if you fear death or love life, yeah, you're doing the right thing for the right, because it's immediate. And so now we can flesh this apart with looking at what your maxim is in this situation. Again, your maxim is telling us what you are doing and why you are doing it. And so we first, as always, specify the material of the maxim, the A and the P. And so here the A, the action, is to preserve your life, and P, the purpose of that, is the fear of death or the love of life, either one. And we can put these together to see the form of your maxim, which is, do preserve your life for the sake of the fear of death or the love of life. And hey, this is starting to look pretty good because you're still doing your duty. You're preserving your life. Well done. And then you're doing that because your fear of death or your love of life absolutely guarantees that you absolutely want to preserve your life. If you fear death, you are going to preserve your life. If you love your life, you are absolutely going to preserve your life. So you are doing your duty, preserving your life, because you have an immediate inclination to do that. Your purpose is very harmonious. There doesn't seem to be much disconnect, right? They're at least seeming to line up pretty well. You're doing your duty, and it's for a reason that, lines up pretty nicely. And so, have we done it? Have we found out what it means to have a good will? We do our duty because we want to do our duty. Kant says, no, Kant, no. And actually, very interestingly enough, the reasoning is actually very similar to the shopkeeper example. Because once more, Kant's problem is about the incentives here. Because again, the incentives are what cause you to make that decision. Set fair prices if you're the shopkeeper, or right now, preserving your life. Again, what are the incentives that are causing you to do your duty, to conform with duty? Why are you doing it? And he says these incentives are still desires, inclinations, or appetites. In this case, it's the desire, of your feelings, the fear of death or the love of life, whichever one it is. But you might respond, Kant, hey, now, dude, I think preserving my life has intrinsic value. After all, there is literally no other way for me to satisfy my fear of death than by preserving my life. Or similarly, you might say, Kant, I love my life. I love my life so much. So there's literally no other thing I can do except preserve my life. So come on, it seems like I'm totally doing the right thing for the right reasons. I want it. I want my life. And Kant would look at you and say, yes, you are absolutely right. You are acting out of an immediate inclination. But in the end, your fear of death or your love of life, he says, it has conditional value. Oh, we can't escape the conditional value. It's limited. Because suppose, for instance, as Kant says, you become despondent or dejected, wishing for death, he says. In that case, you certainly don't seem to love life anymore, and you might not fear death. I guess if you're wishing for it, how could you fear it? And so the idea is once you lose that purpose, once you lose that inclination, once you lose that incentive, those feelings, then you might not do your duty. You might actually do something quite rash. And now please don't do anything rash. We all have dark moments for sure. And I mean, for me, my life sucks right now. I won't lie. My life is garbage, hot garbage. It's like UB learns. My life is garbage. Once I see my wife next month, I will be much happier. But I know. We'll just stick with me. We'll stick together. We'll get through this all together. Now, so Kant's only point here is that your feelings, your inclinations, your desires, they can change. Today you love life. What if tomorrow it really stinks and you no longer fear death? Then you might no longer do your duty. And that's the sense in which then you're conforming to duty right now, but that's conditional on you having that incentive, that desire, that love or fear, depending on what it is. So it's conditional on you actually doing your duty. And of course, yeah, your feelings and things could change, and then you might not do your duty. And so once again, we're seeing how maxims based on incentives and inclinations, here the feelings of love or fear, these tend to be very fragile. These kinds of maxims tend to be very fragile because if the incentives or inclinations change, so does you might now no longer accept the maxim because you don't have that purpose. The P is gone if you don't have fear or love of life. And so you might give up that maxim for something else. And so Kant says, now here's where we come to the subjective limitations I mentioned in the last video. He says, if you really want to understand what it means to act for duty itself, if you want to see what it means to act for the sake of duty, to act from duty, or to act for duty, there's lots of ways to say this idea. You're doing it because it's your duty, not for a desire or an inclination. Well, he says, let's look at the person who actually really does want to die, the person who absolutely hates their life and thinks it's the worst thing ever. They have no fear of death and they have no love of life. Look at that person whose every inclination says to do something rash. But that person still does their duty. That person still preserves their life. Now, Kant's going to say that person must have a really special maxim going on there because their desires and inclinations, those all say to violate the duty, do something rash because they desire death, but they don't do it. They still do their duty and preserve their life. And so Kant makes this exact same point again with the example of beneficence, where again, beneficence means Kant thinks you have a duty to be kind and caring to other people. But look, a lot of people are kind and caring to others, but they only do it because it feels good to help other people. But once again, he thinks this has no moral worth because you're only helping others because it feels good. That is, you're only doing your duty, you're being beneficent, but you're doing your duty out of an immediate inclination or desire, that good fuzzy feeling you get when you help others. And look, that's also very conditional on you having that incentive, that inclination, the warm fuzzies, the feels. Because if you wake up tomorrow and you don't have those warm fuzzies, that kind concern for others, you might not do your duty anymore, right? You might stop conforming to your duty of beneficence. You might start becoming mean and cruel to others. And so again, Kant says, if you truly want to understand what it means to act for duty itself, to act for the sake of duty, to act from duty, then look at the person who really hates people. He just can't stand other people, this person. And yet that person still does their duty. They still help out other people. Now, again, that person must have a really special maxim because their maxim is clearly not based on desire or inclination. This person actually hates people, does not get the warm fuzzies from helping others. They feel disgust, annoyed, and yet that person still does their duty and helps. They still do their duty of beneficence. And once again, what on earth is this maxim? See, these are what Kant says we can truly, by looking at the case where the person hates others but helps them, the person who hates their life but still lives their life. He says those people are not acting from desire and inclination. They're acting because it's their duty, because that's the only thing that's left. Desire, inclination, appetites all say violate the duty, but they still do it. And so Kant's saying they must be acting on a really special maxim. And that's going to reveal to us what he thinks the goodwill actually involves. Now, Kant is almost there now. We almost got it. We can finally begin to wrap things up here and tie it all together. But I think I need to eat more. I'm so hungry. I don't have any Cheetos. I was out, by the way. You might tell them, so I'm sad. But I have some eggnog ice cream in the freezer. I'm going to have some eggnog ice cream. It's so good. Wegmans, thank you. You find something nice for yourself. Have that one last snack, and we'll finally wrap up this module. See you back here in a sec.